President's Dinner was created a year ago to thank those who were most generous to Regis over the past year. Last year's event thanked those who were generously supported the Strong to Endure campaign, as well as our annual fund. And if you recall, the dinner was also part of a year-long series of events that celebrated the school's centennial. This year, we want to thank alumni, current parents, and alumni parents for their support of the annual fund. On behalf of my faculty and staff colleagues, several of whom are with us tonight, and most importantly, the 530 Regis students, thank you for all you do for us. And last but not least, tonight we also salute Father Phil Judge for his 10 years of service as the 21st president of Regis. Now, to begin our evening, we're pleased to have with us the Provincial of the USA Northeast Province of the Society of Jesus, the very Reverend John Cesaro.
Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this evening to greet you and to celebrate Phil Judge, who, as you know, has been president here for 10 years. And I'm sorry to say that I'm the one responsible for taking him away from Regis. I hope you'll forgive me and not throw tomatoes at me during this event. I'd like to ask you to please join me in prayer as we begin our dinner together. So please bow your heads and ask for God's blessings. Good and gracious God, thank you for the gift of Father Phil Judge, his keen intelligence, discerning wisdom, unbridled generosity, and deep affection for students, teachers, administrators, and staff at Regis. His service as president has been inspirational, building on the foundational mission of Regis to educate young Catholic gentlemen for leadership. Father Phil has clearly articulated aspirational goals and successful strategies to sustain and foster the academic, moral, and religious development of its students. He leaves Regis now all the better for having known his competence, clarity of vision, and great love for all that Regis is and can be. And so this evening, we ask you for your abundant blessings, Lord, on Father Phil and on all of us gathered here to honor him and his years of service at Regis. And may Regis continue to flourish to the greater glory of God. Amen. Thank you.
Before I introduce our first speaker, I'd like to acknowledge our pianist for the evening, Ronald Romano from the class of 2016. And Alex Guizon from the class of 2017. Ridiculously talented young guys. Our first speaker tonight is, we're pleased to have Tony DeNovi with us. He's a friend and classmate of Phil Judge's for 40 years, nearly 40 years. We're happy to have Tony with us, and he'll lead us off.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, it's 35 years, not 40. You know, I still get goosebumps whenever I'm in this place and standing up here. It's been 35 years in this school, and these people still have such a special hold on all of us that it's such an honor to be here. And on such a memorable evening, this will probably be the first and only dinner that honors Phil Judge for anything, actually. And I was asked to say a few words about what Phil was like in high school. So I've been struggling for weeks to come up with something nice to say about him. I guess I should be careful because he does have the last word this evening, which is a mistake I've never made before. And I guess the best thing I could say about him was that he was my friend. We were in the same advisory group freshman year. We rode the train together, almost every day it seemed, back and forth to Queens. teammates on the Hearn for many, many years. And I can honestly say he was one of my best friends and still is today. And I have great, great affection for Phil. I think he's been a fabulous president and a fabulous teacher, and we will miss you greatly. What I remember most about him back then was the clarity that he had about his calling. And I was always so impressed by that because most of our classmates, and I think this is still true today, were knuckleheads. And don't laugh, you all were too. But not Phil. Phil had such a strong sense of what it was that he wanted to do with his life. And his calling was so strong. I was always impressed by the clarity of that calling. And I think we can say that he's lived up to that calling with amazing grace and excellence. And it's been fun to watch that turn into such a great career. Now, I will also say that Phil could be a lot of fun. I know that's hard to believe. And I spent some time this week just wishing that I could find a photo of him from back then. Unfortunately, I could not. Oh. Maybe I did find one. First of all, gray hair. It's still better than that hairdo. That's me on the right. John McNicholas, where are you? Gray hair is better than no hair. That's John right over there. What's most striking about this photo? Why hasn't Phil changed? He still has hair. It's still the same color, best I can tell. So you must be doing something right, Phil, with how you're leading your life. And he was a great friend and was a lot of fun. And I knew there were many instances and many stories that led me to believe that he would be a great Jesuit and a great educator and a great president of a school someday. And the ability he had to think on his feet was overwhelming. It was very quick, lightning quick. Just reminds me of a story that I'd like to close with. He and I, as I mentioned, were on the Hearn together for many years, and we're traveling to Washington, D.C., the big national championship, which, of course, we won. Goes without saying, it's Regis after all. But some of us were out at a party that evening and might have had a beer or two. Said might. So Father Rapon, who many of you may know, the longtime head of the Hearn, pulls each of us individually into his room and looks at us in that very serious way and says, "Now, Tony, did you have a beer?" Well, yes, Father, I had a beer. It was me. I admit it. Everyone else dutifully followed into the room and said the same thing, until, of course, Phil Judge comes along. And Father Rapon looks at Phil and says, "Now, Philip, did you too have a beer?" And Phil, without even blinking, said, "Father, I absolutely did not have a beer." Now, Phil would never lie. His calling was very, very strong, remind you. All he really did was simply forget to mention the glass of scotch that he had had earlier that evening. So he comes walking out of the room with Father Rapon, and the rest of us have that hangdog look like, all right, we got caught having a beer. Little did we know that most every Jesuit was laughing at us because they had had about 4 beers themselves. And Phil is smiling. I said, "Phil, what happened? Did you not admit to your crime?" He said, "Well, Father Rapon asked me if I had a beer, and I told him the truth. I did not." And at that moment, I knew that he was destined for greatness. The only surprise was that he didn't become a politician. But the political world's loss has been our gain and Regis's gain. And Phil, I can say wholeheartedly that you are one of my best friends, and I admire you greatly for what you've accomplished here and in your career, and we're all very, very fortunate to have had you lead this great institution for 10 years, so thank you. Now I'd like to introduce another of our classmates, and Mr. Buggy, it is the great class of 1980. Please don't leave the adjective out when you refer to us. Anthony Domino.
Thanks, Tony. I guess I was that knucklehead for sure. 35 years ago, I was sitting at dinner, and 35 years ago, I think I was in this room on this stage when we had our last dance of senior year. And I had a weird occasion to reminisce about this the other day with some other people. And back then, being involved in the student government, we used to book the bands. And I had the great idea of getting, or a few of us had a great idea of getting a band that ultimately became legendary from Long Island by the name of Twisted Sister. And I look at that elevator back there, and I got stuck in that elevator with Dee Snider. So Phil and Tony and Johnny Mac and all of us, I think, all of us who graduated from Regis are proof of the fact that Regis instills something very unique and special by way of our experiences that I don't think we fully understand until it suddenly happens. It's kind of like a secret sauce gets sprinkled on or something occurs, and all of a sudden you look back and you realize that it's different, you're different. Tony, in candor, the concept of the great class of 1980 really was started by my predecessor on the board, as board chair, John Werweis, who always used to like to talk about the great class of 1960. And we took that mantle quite well, and I don't doubt for a minute that there won't be a great class of something else behind us, which is great. And in reality, all the classes who are here are great in their own way. But I was thinking about what were the unique attributes that affected us and impacted us. And I think Regis had a tremendous ability to put us into real world, real life, somewhat protected in the cocoon of the quad and the building and the watchful eyes of those who taught us, and our parents and the like. But our class suffered through, or experienced a fair amount of challenge along the way. Between our freshman and sophomore year, we lost a classmate, Michael Duty. Senior week, terrible situation at prom, we lost a classmate, Stephen Zwicker. Since then, we've lost 3 other classmates, Barry Dowd, Fred Sferaza, Joe Amico. And I think what that did, though, is that challenged us and brought us together in a very unique way. And my knowledge of Phil and my involvement of Phil back then, I think, was not as deep as Tony's, but it was equally as respectful. And again, reflecting back now on what it was like then, I realize that, in fact, Phil exhibited, probably earlier than all of us, a concept that Ignatius spoke about of the Magus. Phil was always about more. Now, many of us were about more at various times. Phil realized that 1 scotch would replace the 3 beers that Tony never got. So, not just that more. But the concept of the Magus is something that I think Phil always had as a classmate and always laid out for us. And when I had been on the board and left and asked to come back, and we were interviewing for new presidents, and Phil and I, for the first time probably in 20 years, 15 years, spoke on the phone when he was coming back, and we had a very good conversation. And I must say that my knowledge of Phil is certainly more deeply ingrained in the last decade or so, but it confirms all the things that I knew and understood him to be back then. Like Tony's picture, though, one of the things that occurred shortly after I became re-involved is our son came here. And probably after the first week or two when Phil showed up, he said, wow, you went to school with Father Judge? He's like, yeah. He goes, he looks so young. To which I responded, seeing what being married and having 4 kids does to you, so. But there is not an effort, a thought, a moment that Phil ever spared for Regis or has spared for Regis. I think about the things that we achieved while he was there, the roof, the green roof. I mean, who would ever imagine that we'd have that beautiful facility up there in that way? And again, same thing, I think when we went to school, we would have probably done a little harvesting up there that would have gotten us all in further trouble. But the reality is, Phil was able to get it done. We were reminiscing about some of the items that occurred while he was president, the fire, the fire that, well, there might be too many Jesuits in the room for me to really reveal this, but the fire that was started by Xavier, okay, I said it, in the gym. But through it all, Phil buckled down, bore down, and we got things done. And we got things done with grace, and Phil got things done with grace and charm, and a sense of the magis that it was always for the cause that I think all of us only now begin to appreciate was started by a woman with a dream and a mission and a vision and a little bit of guidance from some Jesuits back then, but probably a prayer and probably some serious whispering in her ear about what could be. And as I think back about Phil when we were at school, I think this is kind of what Tony was saying, always had this sense of what could be. And what could be was always more, and it was always for others, and it was always kind and professional and courteous. And I don't doubt for a minute that Phil won't be sorely missed, but I really remain convinced that the fact of the matter is the Regis that he's helped to refine and tweak and mold and shape is a far better place. And it's a place that will continue on a path further into the future that is far better off from us having had him in our class, that great class of 1980, or more importantly, the present day. So, Phil, thank you so much. You've been a wonderful leader and friend, and I don't have any pictures. I would like to ask current board chair Pete Labatt to come up and share some of his thoughts.
Good evening, everyone. So look, it will be easy for me to stand up here for the next few minutes and talk about Father Judge's consummate skills as a Jesuit and as a high school president. But this seems like neither the time nor the place for that sort of thing. After all, we've heard the now legendary stories of his heavy-handed approach to fundraising. I remember, for instance, near the end of the last capital campaign, right here in this very auditorium, he met with a number of Regians. And Father Judge took the stage and announced, I have some good news and I have some bad news. The good news is we have enough money to fully endow Regis High School for decades to come. The bad news is it's still out there in your pockets. We also know of his eloquence, being a Hearn champion well-versed in the fine art of extemporaneous debate. But one time, in the middle of delivering a particularly passionate sermon, Father Judge wasn't getting the reaction that he expected. And so, tapping on his microphone, he leaned in and said, I think there's something wrong with my mic. To which the congregation responded, and also with you. We also know that sometimes Father Judge has a difficult time expressing gratitude. One afternoon, he drove back to New York City, late for an important meeting, and was unable to find a parking spot. Looking up toward heaven, he said, Lord, have pity on me. If you find me a place to park, I will give up my favorite Scotch cocktail for a year. It's a big promise. Miraculously, a spot appeared. And looking up to heaven again, Father Judge said, never mind, Lord, I found one. But all joking aside, if you'll indulge me, we do owe Father Judge an enormous debt of gratitude for all he has done for Regis. And as he approaches the end of a decade of dedicated service as president, the second longest in Regis history, by the way, His tenure, in my opinion, will undoubtedly be regarded as one of the most productive in recent memory. I've served on the board with Father Judge for 9 of those 10 years, and I've been able to observe him up close and personal. And while his achievements are too many to list here, let me give you some examples of the extraordinary impact he's had on Regis and on our community. Now, first, he could have taken the easy road and decided to just be president of Regis High School, but instead, he chose an unorthodox path, deciding to teach as well. He taught English to our freshmen in a very popular theater in New York to our seniors. Sounds pretty cushy. He even elected to serve as a freshman advisor, providing mentoring and guidance to our newest arrivals each year. Now, why do this? Why take on these added responsibilities? Because for Father Judge, it's always been about the kids. He has a teacher's heart. He cares about helping the students find the best in themselves. And as students, inspired by Father Judge's commitment to excellence, respond, rise to the occasion. In this way, over the past decade, Father Judge has helped transform countless Regians to be critical thinkers and men of conscience. During the Great Recession, Father Judge was the voice of reason who provided sound financial stewardship and kept Regis out of harm's way. I remember one board meeting in 2009. The school's finances had been battered pretty badly, like many other schools, and the situation looked somewhat grim. Naturally, all ideas were on the table, including making deep cuts to our program, heaven forbid. Father Judge would have none of it, right off the bat. He was certain that for the sake of preserving our faculty, safeguarding our mission, we had to avoid such alternatives at all costs. And what did he do? He played offense. He launched the Strong to Endure capital campaign, raising $41 million, the largest fundraise in Regis history, and slowly but surely, he got us away from the brink. Today, thanks to Father Judge's courageous leadership and, of course, to the amazing generosity of all of you in this room, the Regis Fund is at a near record, and Regis stands on solid financial ground as we take our first steps into the next century. I've always been impressed with Father Judge's passion for social justice. He is a zealous Jesuit, fiercely committed to finding ways to help the underserved. And in perhaps his signature achievement at Regis, he aggressively expanded a program that we are also very proud of, the REACH program. REACH couldn't be more Regian, if you think about it. And as you know, this program seeks out, educates bright middle school boys from financially challenged backgrounds in an effort to help them get to Regis or get to another Catholic high school. To Father Judge, REACH represented the very heart of our mission as a Jesuit school and as a Catholic community, and he poured himself into it. He dedicated more resources to the program. He invested his own personal energies getting to know the REACH students, the REACH parents, even the REACH counselors. And under his leadership, this program has thrived. Beating the odds, 96% of REACH students have gone further than we thought. They've gone on to attend college. And today, Regis is hailed by many outside observers as a successful model for educating the underserved in society when so many other models have failed. For us, I think Father Judge's full-throated advocacy of the REACH program is something that should make us feel incredibly proud when we call ourselves Regians. I would be remiss if I didn't say that, like all good Regians, Father Judge sure knows how to throw a heck of a party. To celebrate our centennial anniversary last year, he presided over a number of truly memorable events, ringing the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange, rededication of our school building, and of course the gala dinner at the Waldorf, where over 1,200 alumni and friends attended and wouldn't leave, it turns out. Even when they were turning off the lights on us at 1 o'clock in the morning, it was a big giant jug night at the Waldorf, which was pretty special. But in commemorating our history and noting the selfless generosity of our foundress, Father Judge reminded us of the joy that we all share in advancing Regis's unique legacy. So tonight, as we applaud his outstanding service to our school, allow me to make a final observation. Strong, principled leaders are hard to find. We found one with Phil Judge. During the last 10 years, Father Judge brought what I call a muscular brand of leadership to Regis. Decisive, moral. Father Judge tackled any challenge with thoughtfulness and clear-eyed conviction for what needed to be done. He never had any doubts. And inevitably, his judgments were on target. It's no accident today, then, that we celebrate Regis as being true to its dual mission, providing tuition-free academic excellence and forming men for others. Phil, I have no doubt that tonight, our foundress, Julia Grant, looking down from heaven, joins us in thanking you so much for all that you have done, for your sacrifice, for your service, and for your steadfast devotion to our alma mater. For me personally, it has been an incredible privilege to work with you. I've learned so much being together, working with you side by side. And I know I speak for the rest of the board and the entire Regis community when I say to you, thank you so very much for all that you have done for Regis. We would not have gotten here without you. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you our president, Father Philip Judge.
Thank you. Thanks so very much. I should be overwhelmed by this evening. On the other hand, I've learned from this past year that Regians will happily turn any event into a party, and that any party prepared by Melanie will be a blowout. So I'm very, very grateful for this chance to celebrate this last decade at Regis with you. T.S. Eliot famously wrote in his poem, Little Gidding, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." And so it seems almost eerily fitting that tonight happens in this room. This is the place where we were first sorted, as in Harry Potter's Hogwarts, into classrooms to take the entrance exam, into varied spots to be grilled by operatives masked as semi-finalist interviewers, into freshman advisement groups, which were decidedly, if mysteriously, not random. And to this place we returned often during our years at the school and for varied alumni reunions and events thereafter. The foundress envisioned the theater as central to Jesuit education. I suspect she had no idea how truly a center it would be for each of us. To be here as a student was an absolutely amazing gift. To return as a faculty member was a great honor. To serve for 10 years as president was something I never imagined and got talked into by persistent classmates. I'm very glad they did. Indeed, it's allowed me really to know this place for the first time and understand the transformative power of Regis and what it might continue to be for future generations. So tonight, let me briefly highlight 3 hope-filled challenges that I see at the end of my time here. Statistics never quite substitute for 10 years of experience. And my experience at this all-scholarship school is that a good number of our families come from households earning less than $100,000 annually. A plurality of our families come from households earning sometimes well north of $250,000 annually. The numbers aren't terribly important. That there is no more middle is. Low income would be fine as long as it was adequate income, which it often is not, and as long as opportunity awaits the next generation, which seems less and less the case. The Catholic school system, with the army of faithful women religious who challenged and cajoled parochial waifs like us to work for this Regis opportunity, is a shadow of its former self. The public school system does not replace it. The private school system is not available to struggling, often immigrant Catholic families. So we should be extremely proud and supportive of the success of our REACH program and its model of substituting middle school education with extra classes, challenges, and social and leadership formation. This is how the coming generations of new immigrants or struggling families will increasingly access the REACH opportunity to find Regis. REACH currently supplies about 10% of our freshman class and provides very well-qualified students to the other New York Jesuit high schools. As a collaborative work among our schools, it's well poised for further growth and expansion in the years ahead. A first hope and challenge. It always provides a chuckle when I point to the extraordinarily large wooden slide rule that hangs in the physics lecture room and ask a student what it is. None of them know. But many will think up creative possibilities, a la Regis. But the reality is that our freshmen have never seen a cassette tape, have no idea why they dial a cell number, and can't remember their first airplane flight. When as a Hearn speaker I first went to the Harvard tournament in Boston, My mother thought that was a very big deal. Today, a significant number of our students travel as Regians every year to Kingston, Jamaica, Quito, Ecuador, China, Spain, Germany, and every other year to Nairobi for language immersion and service learning. The world is our house was a saying that used to be applied aspirationally to Jesuits who could be sent anywhere. For our students, the world is their house. Its concerns and challenges are our concerns and challenges. Our graduates have made significant contributions to finding cures for AIDS, to working with refugees, to engaging in the tough work of diplomacy. Those graduates were prepared for that eventual work before globalization was a word. Our students see the world and its people early and often. How we challenge them to serve globally is essential. A second hope and challenge. For well over a quarter of a century, the Quest Retreat and retreats in general remain transformative high points for each of our students. Regis remains proudly and unabashedly Catholic in a world and time where the expression of that Catholicism seems to be rapidly adapting. Pope Francis has challenged us time and again to know the joy of the gospel and to announce the mercy and favor of our God. I think we were all amazed in our centennial year that we saw our first Nobel Prize winner and our first National Book Award winner. The cover of the last Rand, though, should equally demonstrate the far-reaching voice of our alumni as authors and writers, in addition to all the other contributions they make to the many forms of public discourse. To have such a collective voice is a great hope. To use that voice to highlight joy and mercy is a challenge. The Catholic faith and the creation of men for others lie at the very heart of this mission that is Regis. A third hope and a challenge. At many points in the last decade, I've quoted the early Jesuit Pedro de Ribadeneira. All the well-being of Christianity and the whole world depends on the proper education of youth. We, each of us, owe a debt to the foundress and her family that we can never repay. But for each of us, the obligation to continue their work is a happy burden. To know my gratitude for generosity is to arrive at where I began, where each of us who stepped through that tunnel began. I'm immensely grateful for your support over the years and for the unimagined opportunity to lead Regis for the past decade. For all of that, I thank you, and I look forward to seeing Regis continue to identify hopes and challenges in the years ahead. May God bless us all, and may we enjoy the rest of our night together.
All right, so Father Judge, before you sit back down, we have one more item left to take care of. I'd like to ask Terry Porte, class of 75, and a Regis trustee, to join me. So just to introduce what we're about to do, throughout his 10 years as Regis president, Father Judge has overseen a number of initiatives and projects having to do with the physical space and property. And these initiatives have taken many, many forms. There's probably no physical project more dear to Father Judge's heart than the development of the Regis green roof. If you haven't been up there, you should go. I went up before it was a green roof during one jug night with my classmates, and it was a barren wasteland. Tonight, it's a mini ecosystem. It opened in October 2010. It's 25,000 square feet of native grasses, herb gardens, solar panels, a weather station, an astronomical observatory, and beehives. I hear the science department is working on a proton accelerator, and that will make its way up there next. Its design really serves the purpose of being a terrific learning laboratory for students, and it's not bad every once in a while to be able to enjoy an outdoor class in the middle of Manhattan. When it was installed, it was the 5th largest green roof in New York City. Father Judge, earlier this year, the Board of Trustees tried to think of a way to express our gratitude for all that you've done. Terry had the brilliant idea to launch a secret fundraising campaign in connection with having the green roof dedicated in your honor, and I'm happy to report that we've raised $750,000 in your name in recognition of all that you have done for Regis. And thank you for everyone in this room for your generous support. We have here a plaque to be installed on the green roof this summer, acknowledging this dedication in your name. Terry is going to tell us all what it says.
Thank you. As you mentioned, I'm from the class of 1975, the modest and humble. Not as great as the class of 1960 or the class of 1980, but more likely to reach heaven, class of 1975. Now, Phil, when we came up with this scheme, I felt, knowing you, that if we had asked you if we could do this, and if we had asked for permission, we would have been denied. So tonight, we are here to ask for your forgiveness for having raised this money, and I want to add to Pete's thanks to all of you who have contributed. It is an enormous tribute to Phil, and I think equally importantly to what Phil embodies as Regis, that you have contributed so generously to this. And so let me read the plaque. The Regis Green Roof, dedicated to Reverend Philip G. Judge, S.J., 1980, 21st President of Regis High School, 2005 to 2015, who conceived and oversaw the development of this unique space, presided over the successful growth of the REACH program, and led Regis through its centennial, celebrating 100 years of forming men for others. May 14, 2015. On behalf of the entire Regis family, Father Judge, thank you.
So a toast. Father Judge, as president over the last decade, you dedicated yourself wholeheartedly to the mission of Regis High School. In so doing, you provided all of us with the finest example of what it means to be a man for others. Tonight, we sincerely thank you for being so worthy a defender of the founders' vision and for leaving Regis so well positioned to pursue the many opportunities that lie ahead. To Father Judge. Please join me in singing the Alma Mater. May ours be the noble heart, strong to endure, daring though skies be dark and roadways unsure. May ours be the hero's part, ready to do. We are your sons, fair Regis, our spirit is from you. Here's our martial song as we march along. May ours be the noble heart, strong to endure, daring though skies be dark and roadways unsure. May ours be the hero's heart, ready to do. We are your sons, fair Regis, our spirit is from you.